Greetings, fellow Kerbonauts! Nerdy Spaceman here, in for another episode of a beginner's guide to Kerbal Space Program. In this episode, we're going to be learning about one of my most favorite staging, the asparagus staging, and we're going to unlock a whole bunch of parts and build a rocket capable of landing on the moon and coming back again. So yeah, let's do that. First things first, let's unlock a whole bunch of techs that we're going to need. Starting from the top here, heavy rocketry, that is bigger and wider engines. That's going to be great because in the fuel systems we unlock the wider engines, or the wider fuel tanks, sorry. These hold tremendously more fuel because of the geometry behind a cylinder. Is if you increase the radius you get exponential growth as opposed to increasing the length of it. So making a wider rocket gives you a ton more fuel than making it taller. Advanced construction, I'm skipping propulsion systems because it's just tiny engines and we're not going small today, we're going big. So anyways, advanced construction, we're going to use the radial decouplers here and then a couple other interesting tidbits that we're not really going to use probably. Aerodynamics, I don't think we need it, this is for just bigger planes, so I'm going to skip that. Landing, yes, we need the landing struts, bigger parachutes, that's always good, and the bigger heat shield. We'll be using the bigger heat shield for this one, and about a couple other tidbits. Advanced flight control, yeah, this gives us the lander can. It's one of my favorite single-person, crew pods that you use. It also comes with an SAS inline stabilizer, the advanced one, and that's awesome because it gives you a lot of torque, and the lander can actually gives you less reaction wheel force, less torque than the command pod, the standard original command pod. But this thing gives us like 3 times as much as the command pod, so it's going to give us a lot of control over our craft. I'm going to go ahead and research that. Space exploration, of course, the barometer and the ladders. It's about time we get some ladders, right? And it also gives the storage container. That's not going to be very useful for a couple missions. Miniaturization, small parts, we don't need that. Electrics, solar panels, radiators, batteries, lights, a little probe core just for fun. A whole bunch of really good stuff that we're going to be using. So I'm going to research that. And we still got enough science for one of these upper tech trees. There's a whole bunch there. I personally like the specialized control because it gives us even bigger, even more powerful reaction wheels. And we're going to need a lot of these to stabilize our craft. So I'm going to research that, and that's going to get us started. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to talk about the new staging. Because this new rocket we're building is going to be based off of this new staging style. I'm going to go ahead and start with a dummy rocket, essentially just to show you proof of concept. Take the little fuel tanks and build identical to the one before. We're going to build it's with the parallel staging. We're going to do the onions staging with just 2. There it is. And we're going to go ahead and set up the fuel ducts in like that. Let's make it closer to that. There we go. There we go. A little bit of aerodynamics, and to top it off we're gonna find the engines and get the swivels, and come on, there we go. So I got a whole bunch of swivels. This is identical to the onion staging we did before. You got 2 fuel tanks, they feed into the center one. Now what you can do is you can add more of them and make like a bigger onion, I guess, so to speak. This just adds more stages. They do the same thing, they fuel from the outside to the inside, but then they'll all run out at the same time. But this is where it turns into asparagus staging. When you funnel from this one into this one, now we've got this cool little pattern where we fuel from here into here and then from here into here. That means that these 3 center ones, these 3 here, will be topped off by the outside 2. That also means that the outside 2, these ones here on the very edge of the chain, they will be depleting way faster. So essentially, since these 2 are the only ones that are going to be depleting, we got 5 engines depleting 2 fuel tanks, so they're going to deplete a lot faster. You can do this again by adding 1 more of these stages, and there we go. We've got now a whole big daisy chain going. So this one fuels into this one, which fuels into this one when it goes to the center, and you've got them mirrored on the other side. And this makes for a very, very cool rocket design. Now this staging is all weird, but what you're going to do is you're going to go up here and you're gonna break them up because the outside here, they're gonna deplete really quickly. So you've got 2 fuel tanks that are depleting at the rate of 7 engines. When these drop off, you want to drop them off first and independently. So you find this decoupler that's there, it is associated with them, and move it as the first one to get jettisoned. Then you get 2 more stages going, I guess, ahead of time. Then you want to find the next ones in the line, move them, and then finally get the last ones in the line up there. And there you go. You've got all of these lined up like that. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So the outside ones are going to drain really fast, and then it's going to be the inside ones, and then so on and so forth. And you'll see how only the outmost trailing edges are the ones that drain of energy. So here we go. Launch. And look at it. Look how fast that drains. It's like 7 all at once. And then get rid of them. And you're going to drain these. And meanwhile, these start off topped up. As you can see here, they're filled. And they'll run out. Jettison them. And then these drain at the rate that they normally drain in, which is that. So here we are. And we're getting a lot of overheating because we're pushing it really hard. And then you're left with the final state. It's very interesting design, a very interesting way of doing it. It is also extremely fuel efficient, and as you can tell, we're actually overheating like crazy because I put a lot of power into this rocket. And there it is. Let's see how far we got. Oh, look at that, almost to space far, almost. But anyways, that's with just a little bit of these little engines and stuff, and it makes for an extremely fuel efficient rocket. And we're going to be using this design for building a bigger rocket. But let's get to actually building that much bigger rocket. And I'm going to start with the lander can. This is awesome. I'm a huge fan of the lander can. You can tell it's actually a lot bigger than the old pod. So that means that the old heat shield is just not going to be big enough. It's a little wimpy. You can see here it's pretty tiny, so it's not going to do us any good. So we're going to upgrade to the much bigger one, and it's going to give us a whole bunch of extra space here. Do you see that? So it's going to, as the flames come around, they're actually not going to damage any parts of my ship. I'm not going to have any kind of re-entry issues, which is superb. So then I'm going to go ahead and get the reaction wheel right on there. And I want that reaction wheel as close to the center of mass as possible, but I'm going to continue stacking stuff up as I go. So you'll see here, I'm going to get the Science Junior, pop that down, and it's going to pull my center of mass up. Now, here's something we're going to talk about that we might not have discussed properly before, but I'm going to show you. I don't like putting, because I'm going to put ladders on here, I don't like putting ladders on top of the animated doors on the front of that thing. So what I can do is I can actually rotate it around and put it on the back end like that. So I have a blank surface here to put all my ladders on. Ladders are put in with this thing is rotated with the Q and E keys. So if you get a new material here, Q and E spins it around, W and S flip it over on itself, and you've got A and D that tip it over on its side and roll it up. So that's how you can get all kinds of weird and interesting, positions to put your equipment in, and that's extremely useful. So for example, we need to do that for when we go into the utility section and getting our service bays. These things are super duper awesome. I'm going to rotate it to the doors in the front, and then you can right click and open them, and you can put stuff inside. So like all your science experiments and everything can go inside, safely stored away from the harm that's done to your spaceship. Throw on a little parachute up front, there you go. Now, the interesting thing about putting stuff inside these service bays, which has got to do with the rotating of the parts, is you notice that they go on the outside of these tanks. So if I go here, it's going to put it on the outside. If I try to put it on the inside, it's still putting it on the outside of the part, and that's not good. So what you need to do is you need to actually rotate the part and get it inside. There it is. It goes inside the actual service bay. It still functions, but it's on the inside. And this is going to be really awesome and super useful because we're going to put a whole bunch of other experiments in here too. We've got the thermometer. There we go, a 2-hot thermometer. You got to flip that over too. So everything you put inside, you got to flip it backwards. And then a barometer. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 barometers because let me get it closer here. I'm putting 2 barometers because this is a brand new experiment. We got it from the exploration tech tree. So brand new experiment, so just like the thermometers before, I gotta play catch up. So now, here it is. I've pretty much added a whole bunch of stuff here, and my center of mass is shifted up closer to the torque value, which is great. It's exactly what I want. The thing is the torque, the reaction force they give you, it consumes electricity. So when you right click here, it consumes electric charge. That's quite alright because in the utility section, we just unlocked a whole bunch of batteries. And Now I'm gonna put them in here. So again, as before, this time I'm gonna do two-way symmetry because you got two of these panels. And again, they'll be on the outside, and I'm gonna use the Q and E key to rotate them so they're on the inside. And I can alt-click and just select a rotated part, and there we go. I got extra stuff in there. And just for good fun, well, it doesn't. There it is. I added another battery in there just for extra juice, because can't go wrong with more batteries. Now to keep those batteries topped off, we're gonna get the photovoltaic panels, and we're gonna put those all across the side of the craft. I say, here we go. The center mass is in my way. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and put them here and here. Actually, you know what? Yes, I'm gonna do this one. I'm gonna do four-way symmetry. There we go. I don't want to put them on top of the door because that'll keep me blocked out. I won't be able to hop out of my crew pod. And that's no good. You want to be able to hop out. That's always a must. Okay, there we go. I got some solar panels. I could put one more here, just for fun. There we go. Put in one more up there, and I should be good to go. Now, last but not least, we're gonna add some ladders. So, starting from the top here, work my way down. Some ladders, because you can't go wrong. I'm gonna go ahead and stack these on top of each other, and then I'll have room for this one down here. I guess like so. There we go. I got myself some ladders. How awesome is that? So what this is going to give me the ability to do is when I hop out, I'll be able to walk, climb my way all the way up to the utility bay, gather all my science, and climb my way back down. And also, when this lands on the surface of Kerbin, I'll be able to hop off, gather my science, and hop back in the craft. So this is an excellent lander. Excellent return capsule pod combination thing. And it's also got, rotational force and plenty of juice and solar power. This is just a great little bit of pod action. I love it. You can even add some solar panels up here, but no, I'm not gonna do that. So, next thing on the list would be to build below it. Oh, here, I can tell you the center of mass is way down here, and I've got all this extra craft here, so it makes this little teardrop shape. I don't need SAS to make sure that this thing is pointing in the right way when it comes back in the atmosphere. So this thing, I can just switch off SAS and just let gravity do all the work. Really, really great. Anyways, oh, there we go, some thermal panels. That's what I need. Wait, are these the expandable ones? Oh yes, they are. These are the expandable ones. Excellent. You've got the small panels that just attach. They only draw heat from the part that they're attached to, not from the rest of the rocket. These foldable ones, these ones that fold out and fold away, they actually draw heat away from the hottest part in your craft. So when you have these extended, they're going to constantly draw heat from the hottest part, and they're going to cool down the craft substantially. They're going to prevent it from overheating by a decent amount. So that's great. I want to throw those in there. And again, it's nice because I'm putting them here. Okay, let's slide them up here. That'll be a safer bet. There we go. Nope, don't trust that. Closer is better. Okay, so there we go. And they're nice and tucked away close to the heat shield and behind it. That's the trick. They have to be behind the heat shield, so we don't have anything that sticks out from the heat shield, and everything stays safely behind the heat shield. So that's what we want. Excellent. Now, time to build the lander. We're gonna get these much bigger decouplers, and there we go. And we can start building wide. Now, these fuel tanks are huge. If you look at this fuel tank here, it tells us that it's got a 360 and 440. You'll notice that the wide fuel tanks, right there, look how short it has to be to get the exact same fuel. Look at that. The length difference is ridiculous, and that's what happens when you increase the radius on the cylinder. It's pi r squared h, so that's the radius squared times pi times the height. You can see that as you increase the radius by 1 meter, it's the 1 meter squared. So it keeps growing more and more. It's exponential, as opposed to just increasing the height, which is the single lone h by itself. So we're going to use wide, and it's going to give us a boatload of fuel. And I'm not going to use anything too crazy big, so I'm going to use this thing over here. That's great. Now, this is going to be super massive. And by massive, I mean it has a lot of mass. Look at all that fuel. It's a tremendous amount of fuel. So controlling this is going to be an issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add SAS onto the lander stage, and this is going to give me rotational ability. It's going to give me the ability to rotate. Going to engines, using the liquid the Poodle engine, and it has got an excellent fuel efficiency, 350. This is more than the Terrier engine. So it's got a higher fuel efficiency in space than the Terrier engine. So this is great, a super highly efficient engine, perfect for landing and orbital insertion and stuff. And with this kind of an engine, it's going to have so much fuel and so much fuel efficiency that we'll be able to land on the moon and come back again. So in one stage. So instead of having the Apollo lander where you land on the moon and then you leave behind the big fuel tank and the engine, we're going to take the engine, land on the moon, and then bring it back with us into orbit and back towards Kerbin. And only jettison it when we're getting close to re-entering the atmosphere. So that's going to be super useful for us. So anyways, I think we're off to a great start. Time to actually build the proper rocket. Actual rocket underneath this thing. So, first things first, adding a lot of reaction wheels. Can't go wrong with reaction wheels. And the biggest fuel tanks we've got. I'm going to go ahead and do, let's say, 2. At this point it's starting to get pretty massive. And I don't know how powerful my skipper engine is, which is the engine that's big enough for these. And it's a power engine. This is a lifting engine. It's built for strength. And here we are. This is the beginning of my rocket, and it's time to do some testing. I'm going to call this the ASP, naming it after the asparagus staging that goes into it. So let's add these just for stability. Let's stage everything all at once. Save the ASP, and let's see if we can actually fly this thing. Alright, so let's see here. Turn on SAS, max out my throttle, and launch. Look at that. Just barely moving. This is great. So this is, essentially we have a neutral weight. So the weight of this whole rocket is just a little bit under the thrust, the force that is provided by the engine. Which is exactly what we want, because this isn't going to be actually lifting us off the launch pad, because we're going to have a whole bunch of asparagus staging attached to the outside of this rocket. So that's not necessary for us. Because so long as it's canceling out its own weight, then we're good to go. So revert flight back to the vehicle assembly. We're gonna add asparagus staging on this. Now the way I add asparagus staging is I add it from experience. From before, if you remember, we had the outside engines that did the work for getting us into orbit. We're gonna have exactly the same ones. They're gonna be slightly different because we're gonna use these radial decouplers. They just push us out a little bit farther than they normally would. We want 2 of these. There we go. They just push us out a little bit longer. So, fuel tank here, which is perfect. And then another fuel tank here. And then I believe we had one over here, and then a tiny one on top of that. And I believe this is what we had as our staging. So, put on an aerodynamic nose cone. Add a rudder for stability, and we're not, instead of having only 2, we're gonna have like a whole bunch of these all around. So I'm not gonna add any more fins. There's just no need. We're gonna have so many fins, and they're all gonna be rudder fins too. So that's great. And engines, the Reliant, the lifting, the power, the workhorse engine, which is great. And then we're gonna add a little stability enhancer on all these. And last but not least, we're going to add some strut connectors. Again, connecting the engines to each other so they don't jiggle. And, just for stability's sake, let's add them here to the decoupler. Let's do that, yeah. To the decoupler. And there we go. Perfect. Now, the final bit is the external fuel duct. And I like to add those smack dab in the middle. And there we are. We're good to go. So again, we got this is the onion staging. We've got it fueling from the outside engine to the inside engine, and that's going to provide us with the fuel efficiency so that the center one gets topped off. Now, as I showed earlier in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to, oh, actually, before I do that, let me fix my staging here. There we go. Engines down here, bottom engine down there. Okay, so we're going to grab these, and we're going to move them right here. There we go. Plop them down, and they should be about the same height. There it is. They're about the same height. That's good. But instead of having them on the outside here, we're gonna put them here. And again, it's gonna give us that fueling, that funneling thing that we did before. It's gonna keep funneling from one tank to the other, to the other, to the other, and it's gonna give us an extremely fuel efficient launch. So again, we're gonna alt click here, and this time it's gonna have it the one with the radius in the right point. the fuel duct in the right place. There it is, so it can chain like that. And then last but not least, we get this final guy over here. There we go, we've got 8 of these fully strutted up with all of their bits and bobs and a whole bunch of stuff. So there we go, these outside fuel tanks are going to be our asparagus staging. They're going to help us get to where we want to go. Final thing is we've got to make sure that these are all right. So you start with the one that's farthest out. That's the first one to stage, and that's this one over here. So you bring that down here, then it's the next one out, then it's the next one out, and then finally, you don't need that, it's already in its own stage. And look at that, we have got a multi-stage rocket, a whole bunch of stages going on, saving it, launching it just to experiment, to see how our lift is at the launch. Let's do this, let's see how we're doing. SAS, max throttle, and look at that, and we're off. Nice decent speed, and you'll notice that we're draining fastest from the outside ones. So when we get to a certain height, we're gonna then turn after, because we're not gonna get to, or we might get 100 meters, but personally I like to wait with these asparagus staging. I wait for the first one to get rid of. So we'll go straight up until these run out, which will be shortly after 100 meters per second, so it's not that bad. But there we go, and jettison those, and then immediately begin our gravity turn. But that'll be for another video. But this is essentially what our rocket is going to look like. This is how we're going to fly this thing. Again, we're tilting over, and this is going to be autopilot, and just so much power, so much raw force behind this rocket. It's just so much fun to fly. Alright, switch on our prograde, and here we are. The rest would be autopilot, so the rocket is going to do most of the heavy lifting all on its own. All these little side engines, these things are going to keep us lifted, and every time we get rid of one of these, so here it is, it takes longer to get rid of this one, so every time we get rid of one of these, it takes longer for us to burn out the second ones. And here we go, you can tell right away we're just moving way too slow. We're not anywhere near 15,000, we're already past the 45 mark, so I've got to do a less aggressive launch so I can revert the flight back to assembly. And I should have done back to launch. Oh well. Anyways, I'll experiment with this and I'll perfect it in off camera. But there we go. This is the perfect vehicle for getting us to and from the moon to land on it. But before we do that, I think what we need desperately is landing legs. I was thinking, I forgot something. We don't have any landing legs. How are we supposed to land on the moon? So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this. There we go. And we're just gonna put this off to the side. We don't have any landing legs. This is a landing stage, but we got no landing legs. So we're gonna go to utility. Go to our landing struts, and I don't know, add a bunch of them. Let's do 6. 8. 8 is a nice number. I like 8. And then you can right click and retract them and deploy them, and first issue. These things are not long enough. We're still landing on our engine, so even if we slide them down, that's not really that much better. Like the compression, they're gonna compress and it's gonna crush the engine anyways. So never fear, there is actually a solution to this. Now I'm very fond of this solution. You get girders. You get these girders, you put them down as low to the craft as possible, and then you use the rotation keys to spin them around, so you've got these little struts here. From here on out, you scoot these down, and they'll flip on us. So luckily we had them retracted. And there we go. Bring these down to here. Click these in place, and look at that. We're safely. There's a big gap here. This is good. We can even slide these down even farther if we want to. Look at that. Look at all this space. We got plenty of space. This is perfect. And then you can bring those back in again and reattach our bottom stage carefully. There we go. Everything's attached back to normal. And it's pretty tight fit, I can tell here. It's a pretty tight fit. These things are pretty close to each other. So I could potentially grab these and, no, it's not ideal. No, they don't line up. It's quite alright. There we go. It's a tight fit. It's okay. We'll survive. Now what we could do is we could add, no, I think we should be fine. We've got enough stability in this craft, and this is it. We've got ourselves a craft. This is the Asp. It's got landing legs, it's got everything, so we should be good. One final thing for landing that I will show you in the next video is lights. You always want lights. Lights are like your best friend. So I'm gonna do a little symmetry here, symmetry mode. I like having 2 of each kind, and this will give you a type of a view that it's really nice. Let's see here. Do I want 2 of each kind, or you know what? Let's get the Illuminator Mark ones. These are just the really bright lights, and there we go. They're pointed down. I'll bring them in closer, and there we go. Right above the landing legs, and they'll shoot light down and illuminate our path for when we land. Now, the landing is extremely. Actually, you know what? I'm bringing this up here. Oh, come on. There we go. And center them ish right there. There we go. So, what these are going to do is they're going to light up the ground as we land, because we might not land on the bright side, we might land on the dark side, and it's impossible to land on the dark side. So bringing lights is going to be extremely important for us, and bringing plenty of them is also great. You know what, we don't need this many, let's do 4. There we go. I think 4 is a good number. 8, nope, did 8 again. There we go. There we go, 4 of these, and then we'll add 4 of these too. There we go, 4 of these, just for fun. There we go. So we've got all kinds of different lights. These are short range, the other one's a spotlight long range, but that'll be just fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and save the ASP, and this is gonna be a great rocket. I cannot wait to fly this. I will practice on the launch trajectories, and in the next episode you'll see exactly how to fly this thing safely into orbit, and then onto the moon and into landing. So I'll see you then. Oh, this is so very exciting. Anyways, this has been Nerdy Spaceman. I hope to see you soon. Stay safe and fly far.